Hello and welcome to the Growing Healthy Families podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Scott Haggerty. On this show, I interview the world's top health experts so that you can know with certainty what it takes to give your family a life of epic health and wellness.
As parents, we don't want to see our kids struggle. I knew that he had the potential. I knew that something needed to be done.
I was 18, unplanned pregnancy, didn't know what to do. Do we keep the child? Do we not?
For us, one of our goals always is to try and make sure that, we're here.
Amen to that, brother. Amen to that.
Questions about why it might be. And, one of the things that we try to do to try and step in front of this conversation to try and help to bring awareness to what the big factors are that will cause a lot of kids to just get off kilter this time of year. So, moms and dads, the holidays are an awesome time. Like, we love them. They're lots of fun. But there's also things that can be pretty major stressors for our kids. And so let's talk about some of the things that can directly impact our child's behavior at home and at school during the holiday season. Ever since Thanksgiving, right, our kids have had a lot more sweets than what they normally would have, right? There's the pies, there's the cookies, there's the treats at school. There is a lot more what we consider to be high glycemic index sugars in their system. And if you're not familiar with that term, the term glycemic index is a measure of how fast a person's body absorbs sugar, right? The foods that we eat, they have this ranking on this thing called the glycemic index. And so a lot of the baked goods, the candies, the treats, since, Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, a lot of the foods that our kids are eating that they're getting right now, they're very high on the glycemic index, so there's a big dose of sugar coming in. It spikes their blood sugar, and then their pancreas secretes insulin to try and get all that extra sugar stored. And when that happens, there's a big crash. Well, two things happen, right? If you have a child that's even a child that has no behavioral issues, it's going to cause them to be more erratic. Blood sugar up and down, it's going to affect energy. They'll be more hyper, but then they'll crash and they'll be crabby and they'll be off focus, and it's going to be more difficult. If you have a child with struggles, this is going to be a really significant impact on their quality of life, because their blood sugar, when it goes up and down, it means they're really dipping into and having to use their fight or flight division of the nervous system that much more. If you've got a child that's already stuck in fight or flight, and then their body's being forced to use that side more, guess what happens? Nerves that wire together fire together. The more they use it, the worse it becomes. So their behavior, their focus, their attention, their temperament, a lot of the symptoms are going to get worse when their blood sugar is going up and down. And I tell a lot of the moms and dads that are in our practice a lot of these basic things because it's important to understand that one concept. But the effects on kids at school the effects on kids' behavior at home and at school are multifactorial, right? We're talking that we've got their blood sugar that's going up and down. So we've got kids that have big changes in sleep routines because with all of the upcoming holiday parties, all of the events, all of the school things, all of the friends things, there are big changes in sleep routines. And then we've got things like, going out on the weekends to shop and staying out later and variations of their sleep patterns versus what they normally have. It's going to really, really mess with their body's ability and their brain's ability to recover. And, guys, think about it. Like, if we're not getting enough sleep, we're going to be a little bit crabby. Think about a kid that requires 10 to 12 hours of sleep per night for their nervous system and their energy reserves to be kicked back up to normal. If they're going, an hour or two below that on a given basis, it's going to wear them down. And if they have to go below that, guess what they have to use? Stress reserves, adrenaline, cortisol, noradrenaline, aka the fight or flight system. And so they're tapping into these stress reserves, and that'll really trigger those behaviors to get worse. The other thing is they're getting a lot less exercise than normal. A lot of kids aren't getting outside and playing much. They're not getting recess at school like they normally would have. If they are having recess, they're indoors, so they can't do a lot of the normal things where they would have run around on the playground and, played with their friends in the monkey bars and, gone on the swings and just burned off energy in general. My little guy loves getting out and playing football. And he'll get out there and throw the ball around with his buddies, and they'll run for the entire lunchtime and burn off a bunch of energy, come back in, feel nice and calm coming into the second half of the day. A lot of kids are not getting that now. And then they get home and they can't go outside and play like they used to. And, they can't go and ride their bikes and run around. So they're getting a lot less activity. Big important term. If kids can't move, then they accumulate stress. It's the same at school. It's the same at home. The less movement they get, the more their nervous system acquires and accumulates stress, aka their temperament's going to get worse, their mood's going to get worse, the behavior's going to get worse. Thirdly, as fun as the holidays are, believe it or not, guys, and moms, did you know this because you're kind of running the show in terms of like just getting out and doing a million different things, it's stressful. Even though the holidays are great and we love them, we're doing a lot of different things, routine changes, alterations in our schedule. We're going to parties. And, if you have a kid that's got sensory issues or anything like that, and you take them out to Christmas parties, guess what's going to happen? Their sensory system's going to get overloaded and they're going to get upset, right? Because you're pushing them into situations where they may not have the reserves to handle it. And it does not take a lot to push them over the edge when you get them into an environment like that when they're already kind of tapped. So think about that as you're getting into the holidays, keeping close tabs on kind of what your child's mood's like. What's their temperament like? Were they crabby coming in? And expect that if they're crabby coming into a situation, don't be surprised if they melt down after a very short period of time if they get overstimulated, because the nervous system just can't handle a lot if they're already worn down, and if their sensory system's already let's just say not handling stress as well, and they get into an environment where they can get overstimulated, just watch. It's something where we see a lot more meltdowns this time of year than normal, and they tend to be bigger and last longer. And the other thing that we want to talk about too is a lot of kids are getting way more screen time, more time on YouTube, more time playing video games, more time just with their eyes and their faces buried into a phone, an iPad, a computer, or a gaming system. And moms and dads, that's a huge problem. I know that sometimes we needed to get a few things done, but the other thing you need to keep in mind is that when a child is able to laser focus on a video game for a long period of time, or TV shows, or phones and YouTube and all that stuff, then what that does, that long-term laser focus, it also triggers their nervous system to get into a stress response. We're not built, none of us, kids or adults, to be in focus for periods greater than 30 minutes. There's a study they talk about here often. I actually did a video that's on our YouTube channel, so if you guys are watching YouTube, go to our YouTube channel, the Elite Family Kairos page, and I did this video back in the fall where we talked about like school study habits. And I referenced a study that was done by Harvard where they talked about the sweet spot for time of attention and focus for studying. And so what their research concluded is that when you go past 30 minutes of straight time in, let's say you're studying or doing a project, whether it's moms or dads or kids at school, once you get past that point of 30 minutes, even in the best of situations with an awesomely developed, high-functioning nervous system, it's point of diminishing returns after that. So if you have a child that's already got some sensory issues, focus and attention issues, emotional issues, living with their nervous system stuck in stress mode, if they're spending time watching games or movies or phones and things like that, and plus study time, all of those things are just turning on their stress system to a much higher level because of the long time in high level focus, and also the background noise of what they're getting from blue light, because blue light really will trigger a lot of stress in a child's nervous system because it chronically dials their nervous system up. So what can we do about it? Moms and dads, I'm a resource guy. Like, I really love talking about how we can jump in front of these things because they're problems, but the great thing about problems is almost all problems that we know of have some kind of a solution to help. So let's talk about what we can do. Number one, we need, as moms and dads, to put in controls on sugar. And sometimes that means saying, hey, teacher, we don't need the kids having candy and sweets and treats every single day. And if they are going to do it, then we also say, listen, there's a limitation that I want on my child where, they're not to have any more than, if they're having cookies, no more than 2 cookies on a daily basis. If they're given candy canes and treats, no more than 1 piece or 2 pieces of candy on a daily basis. We also need to make sure that, in situations where we're out at parties or we're having treats at home or, there's cookies around, we need to make sure that we also put strict controls on those two for our kids. We do it at home with our own kids. Like, we tell them, that treats are to be done sparingly. They're going to get, treats once, twice a week, not going to have them a lot. And we try to make sure that always that we're going to have a treat, it's going to be paired with food. We don't believe in eating foods in isolation. We don't do a sugary food by itself. We try and put something with it that's going to slow down its absorption into our bloodstream. So, the ideal thing is have them eat a vegetable dense meal, fiber dense meal, and then give them a treat right after they eat, so that the impact on their blood sugar won't be as big, because if you have like vegetables, because of their fiber, they slow down the pace at which the sugar will be absorbed. Think about that. That's a big important piece, right? The more fiber they have in their diet, the slower the sugar gets into their system. Try to really enforce that. That will make a huge difference. Now, if dinner consists of mac and cheese and you're giving them cookies, it's not going to work, because you can't have a high glycemic index dinner, right, where it's all simple sugars, eating potatoes or French fries or macaroni and cheese, and then expect the child to be able to go and handle having a cookie. It needs to be something where if they're going to have things like mac and cheese or potatoes, you have to have a larger portion of vegetables with it to really get the effect you want of controlling blood sugar. So if you're the opposite right now, start switching. Make their portions smaller, the mac and cheese and the high carbohydrate foods, and start getting more vegetables into their diet. Can be a battle, but listen, moms and dads, I will tell you this. You want to fight this battle while they're kids, where it's okay to not be their best friend and for them to be a little bit mad at you, but fight the fight now, because you don't want your kid who's a picky kid now with food to become a picky adult whose health is completely trashed because they've eaten crap their whole life, okay? These are the battles that we have to fight now as moms and dads so that we can create successful, healthy adults with a broad palate that are willing to try the healthy foods because Mom and Dad made me when I was young. They'll thank you for it later, I promise you. Also, keep them on a sleep routine. I cannot emphasize that enough. I know it's so easy to get completely off, but you got to make sure that your kids are getting a consistent sleep schedule. And, with the holidays, it's hard because, when they hit Christmas break, man, it can be like all bets are off and they're staying up till 11, 12 o'clock at night. And, sleep schedules, they're getting up way later. As much as possible, try to keep them close to what their sleep schedule is for school. You'll find that they will transition more gracefully into break, and they will transition more gracefully back into school. It'll be much easier on them. But also making sure their sleep time is sufficient. So if you're not sure about the amount of time that your child needs, then do me a favor, wherever you're listening to this, whatever platform, whether it's YouTube, Facebook, Podbean, iTunes, wherever, put your question in there about your child's level of sleep and let me know, and we'll make sure that we put those out there so that you guys know exactly how much sleep your child needs if you are not certain. And the other thing that you can also do to try and help with offloading stress, and I say offloading meaning giving a child an outlet, is find more ways for them to get exercise. It can be anything, right? It can be, if you have a local rec center or a gym, take your kids there. Let them go play, let them play basketball and run around, or go in the pool and let them swim. Be intentional about this stuff, because moms and dads, it's something that is so critical. And here's something you have to keep in mind, right? Our bodies were built to move, and when they don't do well. Right? The more we move, right? We as adults, we can hurt, but we also get stressed. So in a child, they need movement because it drives brain development and mitigates stress or controls how they accumulate stress. But the other side of it is that is a quick and easy way to get their brain to switch gears. So I just a little bit ago had a conversation with a dad who was talking about how, in school, his son has, as part of his accommodations, the teachers make sure that he has wiggle breaks periodically throughout the day. And they also make sure that, he gets out and runs off energy consistently during his recesses so that he's able to come in and have his energy levels more regulated. But what that does, moms and dads, when a child gets up and exercises, they get a big hit of endorphins. You cannot be in growth and development, you can't be in growth and protection at the same time. So if you want a child's nervous system to be calm, part of how they stay there is they need to get sufficient exercise, because when they get a hit of endorphins, it turns off their production of cortisol and adrenaline. Great way to really help a child. Now, also think about, if your child is not able to get to a rec center, you guys don't live close to one, or it's not practical, think about doing things like wiggle breaks, right? Make sure that when you guys are at home, let's not camp out. Let's get up and, get up and dance. Let's get up and do things where we're moving our bodies. Let's get up and, play around. Let's wrestle with our kids. Let's, do things where we're up and moving as often as possible with minimizing the amount of downtime. You can do things like family yoga. There's great programs like the Cosmic Yoga channel on YouTube, where you can do yoga with your kids, or get into doing your yoga practice, your exercise practice with your kids. Do calisthenics, get your kids down and let's do a push-up contest, or let's do a body squat contest. There's little things that we can do creatively to try and find ways to get ourselves to move. If If you like going out in the snow, or your kids like to go out in the snow and they got their snowsuits, let them go outside and play in the snow. If you guys live someplace where you can go skiing, get out and go skiing. Do things where we create intentional exercise so that we're getting ways to burn off their energy and helping to keep their brain and their nervous system in a position where they do have the outlets necessary to keep their brains calm. Make sure that we have strict limits on the amount of time they're allowed to sit still, right? Like if they're doing homework, or if they're watching a movie, or if they're doing video games, 30 minutes max of time that they're going straight before they get a break. That is a really, really critical window of time, because if we go beyond that window, then it's going to really negatively affect our ability to keep our brains calm. So also make sure we put strict limits on screen time. We really want to make sure we have hard limits on the amount of screen time that we get on a daily basis. The big thing you want to keep in mind is that even like the World Health Organization, they've actually talked about, the effect of screen time on kids. And in all of the research and all the recommendations that are being made by the WHO, which is the highest body in the world for health, they're making recommendations for maximum screen time of about an hour a day. Okay. And so think about things like that when we talk about like how much time our kids have to spend on sustained focus, because, if you figure during the course of the day, the kids are spending a lot more time on screen. So if we think about trying to control screen time when they're at home, then we're able to put kind of some bumpers on there, because, listen, they have to do homework and they've got to do their things, but we need to make sure that they're not spending a ton of time when they come home then getting back into the screen time and hyper-focusing and not letting their brain disconnect for a little bit. It's really critical for brain development and behavior that we help our kids to have constructive outlets, so they're not spending so much time in sustained focus that the brain never gets out into a place where it's able to, disconnect, that it's able to, go into a place where it starts to process everything they've learned and they've seen, and get out of that sustained focus mode. Because, moms and dads, the more that a child spends time in fight or flight, the worse that their behavior will become. So by putting bumpers in, we start putting some controls in. And, one last recommendation too that I want to make is, many of you know that I'm a pediatric and family chiropractor, and there's a couple of tools that I use here in my office, which I think are critical. Number one, if you have never seen a pediatric and family chiropractor before, find someone that is a pediatric and family chiropractor. So the organization that my practice that we belong to is an organization called the National Family Wellness Alliance. And you can go to their website. It's the nfwa.org. And through the website, you can find pediatric chiropractors. So like if you have a child that's struggling with some neurodevelopmental conditions, then these would be the people who would be best equipped to help your child. But, if you just want to make sure that your kid is the smartest kid in their class and sick, less than everyone else, and their brain is developing awesomely, and you just want to make sure that it hits optimum, talk to them. That's what their specialty is, brain performance, making sure that your child lives life the way that they're supposed to. It's a great thing to feel like you can, have control over making sure that your child is reaching their optimum potential. It's one of the coolest things about being a chiro dad is I get to watch my kids being these amazing kids who do great in sports and in school and are hardly ever sick, and watching their development. And it's a really cool position for me to be in, because I know the effects that those things have had on my own children, but I also see the effects it has on the hundreds of kids that we have cared for here in our practice. And one last thing that you may want to look into, I use a resource just for my own personal stress management, but I also use it for, memory and recall. And I have a lot of the kids in our practice and a lot of the adults in our practice utilizing an app called BrainTap. And if you've never heard of it before, moms and dads, it's really cool. It's a great resource, because one thing that's really important about it is it can be mostly passive. If you do it, obviously you're going to want to go through and do the brain exercises that they're taking you through. But, if your kids are struggling with focus and attention at school, there's programs that can help to calm their brain down to improve focus and attention, even if they're not actively following the visualizations that are recommended, because they can sync the brain waves and help to dramatically improve function, because a lot of the program is done in a way that talks to the subconscious brain. So I have a lot of parents who, when their kids start doing it, the changes start to happen pretty quickly. Great app. And and honestly really inexpensive for what you get from the overall value of the product. I think if you do like one of the individual sessions, like the children and learning, I think it's only like $9.99 a month, and I think if you do the entire app, it's only like maybe like $39. So I'd have to ask my wife because she's the one who pays that bill. But I think it's like $39 a month for everything in the app, which, you know, when you look at the programs, there's like 400 plus programs on there, on everything from sleep to stress to waking up to memory processing to, optimal weight management to, focus and attention to concentration. So it's a great program. So if you're looking for resources for yourself or for your kids, great resource. I would highly recommend it. I've been using it myself for quite a long time, as do a number of members of my staff and a ton of our patients, and everyone gets great results with it. So hopefully this episode was helpful for you guys, moms and dads. Do me a favor. If you have questions, make sure that you put it onto either the Facebook page, if you're listening to this on YouTube, wherever you're listening to this episode, go back in and let me know what questions that you have. We'll make sure we get answers out to you, either replying back to you directly, or if it's something we need to make another podcast about, we will get the content created so that we're giving you all the resources that you need so that your family can live a life of epic health and wellness. And moms and dads, I know we're getting close to the holidays here, so hopefully we'll see you on the next episode. But in either case, I pray for your family to have a Merry Christmas and a blessed. Thank you for listening to the Growing Healthy Families podcast, the world's #1 source for health education. Make sure to go to iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts and give us a review. Make sure to follow us on social media at the links listed in the show notes, and let us know what area of health you are struggling with so we can get you and your family on the road to epic health.